Welcome, everyone. So we've got some distinguished guests here. We've got Professor Khalid from Nelson Mandela Bay. We've got Monique, who is very important. It says NB over there. And then we've got Denise, who is the chair of the Women in IT chapter of IITPSA. Calvin is our GM. But let me focus more on Marius. Before I focus on Marius, just some information about IITPSA. It is the Institute of IT Professionals South Africa. It's a not-for-profit. It was established in 1958. Some of you may not know that it used to be called the Computer Science Society, and I think they changed it in 2009 because society kind of sounded like exclusive, but institute sounds more sort of all embracing, and we try and embrace everyone. So, for those of you who are not members, IITPSA is like SICA, but for IT people or the Legal Practitioners Council. For those of you who are not aware, the phrase "I am a lawyer" can get you 8 years in jail if you're not registered with the LPC. I hope we get to a point where we can say that you can't say you're an IT professional unless you're with IITPSA. So I didn't introduce myself. I'm Sabah. I'm the chair of IITPSA Gauteng chapter. Anyone you can reach out to me with a direct message. I won't freak out, don't worry. And maybe we can get more people included in our not-for-profit activities. We're doing many things, paddle days, networking, thought leadership. I'm quite involved with VUT. They gave me this nice briefcase or whatever it is, um, and guest lectures and hackathon judgment. We need people to help the students bridge the gap between academia and industry. I used to be a lecturer, actually, so I can go on for another 45 minutes, but we're not here for me. I'm just doing the introduction of IITPSA. We're here for Marius, who is the leader of our Enterprise Architect special interest group, and special interests which are positive and empowering, not corrupt. Um, so yes, let me stop talking now. Marius, can I hand over to you to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Marius Snel. I'm being a practitioner of enterprise architecture for close over 25 years, and I've been through various implementations of enterprise architecture, and I'll share a bit more of that as part of my talk. And it's been something that I've been a part of the IITPSA and specifically the Enterprise Architecture Special Interest Group for quite a number of years. And it's a pleasure to bring you the some more information about where our enterprise architecture is going, and to share some of my experience and some of my thinking about the future and where enterprise architecture is going forward, and the implication of that. So, yeah, a little bit about me, but I'll share a bit more as I go through my talk in any case. So, thank you very much. Then, the Right, so let me get started on this. As I already said, I'm Marius Snel. The thing that I've been in this industry for over 25 years, and it's been quite an interesting industry. And the one thing that I've seen many a times over the past 25 years, I've seen many things happening in the enterprise architecture, the domain community, what has happened in various companies over the past 25 years. And the one thing that I always found interesting is the fact that we have has been many sort of, what shall I call it, presentations, talks, blogs being published to say enterprise architecture is dead, or the death of enterprise architecture. Yet for some reason they keep on being alive. So today, finally, after 25 years, I can bring you a talk where we say enterprise architecture is dead, artificial intelligence has finally killed it. Or did it? Well, let's see through my talk if we have a bit of a different perspective around that. So the one thing I wanted to share with you specifically is the fact that over these 25 years, I've actually been quite passionate about enterprise architecture. I have possibly trained many of you on TOGAF. Oh, sorry, Sabah, I'm not allowed to use product names, so I'll just say that famous framework, and been quite passionate about training on that. I've been involved with many implementations and throughout my 25 years at different companies. And I think, one of the things that is quite clear in enterprise architecture is always, making sure people understand your terminology and how you use your terminology. So I think it's only appropriate that I do that again today. And I want to highlight two specific things. We normally talk about architecture capability, which is the ways of work, your reference model, your tooling, your approach, which is in essence the operating model of your EA capability. And then we talk about architecture content, the models, the artifacts, the deliverables, the actual architecture work, basically what is being produced by the capability or through the capability. Now, it's important, I think, for my talk that I share these differences with you so you can understand the difference as I go through my talk. Now, over the years, one of the things that I've been involved with in a lot of ways was helping companies to set up an architecture capability and then also create architecture content, whether that content be solution architecture or enterprise architecture. But that content what we quite often did is we tested developing content, tested the capability against the content and how the process would work. But the one thing that I need to do a bit of, open admission here today was the sad part is when we got to the end of an engagement, it is quite often that the value was in the architecture content, not in the capability. And the sad part is that capability quite often became paperware and just stayed as paperware, and the people saw the value in the content, not in the capability. So that was one of the things that I quite often wondered why they wanted to create a capability if it afterwards didn't see a lot of the value in that. And were we actually doing something that wasn't adding that much value? Well, and maybe is that something we should continue, but maybe we were ahead of the curve. So all of that changed for me after a discussion I had with one of our clients. And that story is the story that changed everything for me. So let me tell you a little bit about the story. So we were contracted to actually create an architecture capability for a large FMCG company. And the enterprise architect contracted us, and we were asked to develop the architecture capability, which we then did. And we built that capability with the governance frameworks, the processes, etc. And then they employed a large consulting firm to actually develop the content using the capability and do the enterprise architecture content and solution architecture content following the capability that was created. Now, the interesting thing was, as what quite often happens in our industry, was the CEO was resigned or went and did something different, and a new CIO was employed. So the new CIO came on board and decided, you know what, I think there's more value in solution architecture than enterprise architecture, and basically decided to stop all the enterprise architecture work that was being done. Now, what the architect then told me, the enterprise architect told me, was the fact that, well, they did keep him as the enterprise architect, but now overseeing some solution architects, and he still had to do the governance, the planning, the direction of the solution architects. So what he did was he imported our architecture capability work, all the work that we built, he imported that into his data environment, into his fabric environment. And then based on that, he created his own enterprise architecture team, which actually consisted of some AI bots or AI agents. His AI agents, now using the capability, was actually partaking in his governance sessions, actually helping him to doing some planning and some decisions and for the solution architects. So that was a very interesting story that changed my mind. Now, why that changed my mind was actually in this specific case, all of a sudden the capability definition became the asset. The content, which was just an expression of it, turns out that was the thing that was cancelled. The CIO cancelled the content work, but the capability survived. And the capability definition is exactly what the machines needed to operate quite well. Now, nobody ever went and did that by design. Nobody ever by design went and said, oh, by the way, what happens to our enterprise architecture team if AI takes it over? Let's do planning for it. This is something that did not happen by design, but through the judgment of one person who understands the difference, created this AI agents to replace his EA team in essence. So that was a very interesting story for me because all of a sudden, the one thing over the years that didn't seem to have value is all of a sudden now having value in the context of doing, of creating AI bots and AI agents working for you. So basically, the one question I want to leave you with, or the one question that you maybe should have out of all of this, is in essence, who decided what those agents are allowed to do? Not generally, but specifically. Who decided they were actually allowed to make decisions from an enterprise architecture point of view with the help of some human interaction? Who decided what data they have access to and what data they can actually use to make recommendations on? What interaction they would have with human beings and how would that actually work out at the end of the day? So who decided that? In our story that I've just told you is my client basically through his own experience made that decision. He didn't have a mandate to make that decision. There was just nobody else that was doing it, so he had to fill that gap. Now, who needs to help with those decisions? Is it your AI vendor? We know that they make decisions of what the technology is capable of and what the technology is allowed to do. Is it your executive team? We know they make decisions about your strategy and how to achieve your strategy. And they are the ones that actually make decisions for the strategy and the vision of the organization. But in between these two is actually where the day-to-day real interaction between your AI capability and the organization is where that meets. So that gap is where your AI capability needs to meet your organizational values, your risk appetite, the human judgment. And currently we see that is a gap that exists in organization and no owners are actually involved in that. So there currently is not somebody that owns the gap between the AI and the executive or the strategy team. Now, if we then look at that in our story, one person made that decision, made that because there was nobody else doing that. Now, that is not a criticism. What that is actually an honest description in today's real world of how most organizations are actually using AI and doing AI governance. And it's basically happening in that way where organizations are making some decisions and it's happening where certain people are making them based on their experience or how they believe it can be utilized in the organization. In this case, one capable person made some good calls under pressure without the mandate, and it worked out in this specific scenario. However, this is not a governance model. In essence, this is like wearing a job title. So if we now basically think who should actually own this, who should actually own this specific job, okay? Is it the CTO that should own this job? Now, basically, the CTO is the role is to actually govern what sort of technology should be used, how it should be used, where it should be used in the organization. The CTO's role is not to decide which AI tools are going to have authority, which people have authority to make decisions and have the understanding for making those decisions. That role was never specifically built for this specific role. It was about the technology, not deciding and the distribution of authority across your digital and your human workforce. The AI vendor. Well, they govern the capability and what the capability should do. They don't understand your organization's values, strategy, principles, and the politics in the boardroom. They are the ones that actually just understand and govern what the AI tool could do at the end of the day. So they are not really built to actually make decisions in your organization. Your strategy advisors. Now, they are the ones that normally get onto your organization, help you to define, well, where you should go from a strategic point of view, what your structure should look like potentially, and your operating model should look like potentially. But at the end of the day, they're not the ones that stays there when the tire hits the road, speaking, where actually hundreds and thousands of AI bots or agents are actually making decisions and things going right in the organization or going wrong, and somebody needs to take accountability for that. So they are not the right ones to do that. So what do we actually need? Well, we need somebody that actually understands your organization's business model, the operating model, how systems connect with each other. And I'm just not talking about IT systems, but broader systems actually interact with each other. And it's not just technically, but organizationally actually understands that in your organization. Somebody that can actually understand and what the boardroom is trying to do, the strategy from the boardroom, what is the organization's stated values, and can actually take those values and principles and create them into rules and algorithms that can actually be tested to make sure your AI agents are actually adhering to the company's values and principles. Somebody that has actually gone through and actually have marks on their backs, or has the background of having failed transformations, seeing the difference between making good and bad decisions and the impact that can have on an organization. So somebody that has actually been there, done that, got the t-shirts in various different ways in an organization. It's somebody that, as I mentioned already, that understand the strategy of the organization, the systems, how they all work together. It's basically somebody that has the big picture, understand the big picture in the organization. Now, who else can do that or understand that currently best situated to actually fill that role than actually the enterprise architect? Okay, because if you think about it, and we normally used to use quite an interesting analogy, which is if you take a car, now an enterprise architect doesn't maybe know exactly what the right ways are to actually, if you look at a tire, what is the right compound to use for creating a tire, or the best metal to actually create a piston in a car's engine. But I know there's a relationship between these key components that makes up the car, the relationship between them. And in essence, that holistic overview of understanding how things should work is actually the domain of the enterprise architect that understands these relationships about these different components. Not necessarily specifically how each one of those things work, which is basically how the inside of a system work, but actually understand the, if I can put it that way, the holistic overview, the operating model of how that environment should actually work. So let's look a little bit about the history of enterprise architecture and where we came from. In a lot of ways, we were quite often filed under the IT department. I think it was a presentation from the Tech Forum in America that somebody shared with me that says in most organizations, the enterprise architects are either sitting under the CIO or they're actually sitting under, at the end of the day, they're sitting under maybe another development manager within an organization. So they are never seen as a very important key role within the organization. They're quite often seen as a role that helps to model systems, put IT systems together, understanding the solution of an IT system, the design of that, but not at a strategic level, helping an organization to understand strategically the impact of changes in the organization, realizing the strategy, understanding how key things are working holistically in the organization. Well, yes, I have to say that quite often we've been an industry was good at having debates about theory and delivery and which frameworks and methods should be worked and the value of that. And we've quite often been either placed in a business environment or in an IT environment. But the one thing about us is that we've always understand business and IT, and we understand how this work together. We will have the component that actually understand how to actually combine different capabilities in an organization, people, process, technology, whether that people, in essence, going forward is either going to be digital or human people in essence. All right. And the other thing as well is that even today, I think a lot of C-suite people are uncertain about what enterprise architecture is in the reality. I'm very glad to say I'm currently working with a client that actually believes enterprise architecture is a strategic component at the board level. I'm not sure how many organizations see it that way. I still think a lot of C-suite people do not really understand it. And if you talk to them, they'll probably point you to somebody, in the CIO or the IT department. So how does that change now? I do believe going forward, structuring these different components, moving away from just content, which is IT-based content in a lot of ways. Yes, there has been a lot of change into the business domain. And by the way, I'm just seeing there's a lot of people waiting in the meeting room, so maybe somebody can let them in. Sorry. Then basically, there's been a lot of people doing some of the
Marius?
business architecture. Yes.
Sorry, I'm not co-host, so I can't let anybody in.
Oh, I don't know where. Okay. I'll let me see if I can add them in.
Okay.
I don't know where Kelvin is. Okay. Okay. Apologies
Alvin,
for that.
Alvin is in the waiting room.
All right. So anyway, then basically one of the things I do believe that is going to happen going forward is that there is going to be a seat opening in the board level for a person that understands that and can actually guide and direct executives as to the implications of the decisions with regards to how human versus digital humans, if I can call it that, digital agents are needing to work together to form your new workforce at the end of the day, and the implications about that. And that is a role that I believe will be created, and not by invitation, but I think by necessity it's going to happen. Because somebody needs to own and understand the human AI authority questions and how to answer that. And I think no other discipline is structurally positioned for this. And the profession, and I believe if the profession is not pursuing this seat by now or really thinking about this, somebody else is going to take that. Now, I do believe that this seat is being created. There is things happening in an organization. With or without, the only question is whether EA is ready to walk into that specific environment. So, what does that mean in practice this week in your organization? So let's think a bit about that. What it looks like is a person who asks when an AI agent pre-approves a payment, under what value must he approve it? Who decided that they need to do that? Who reviews that? How often? What happens if it badly goes wrong? If in an organization, if a human makes a decision about a pre-approving a payment or a loan to an organization, and something goes wrong that costs the company lots of money, there's a consequence to that person. There's a consequence of a person being fired. That creates sort of an inside relationship within that person to know that my job is at play if something goes wrong, and I need to make sure that everything is correct. That may not happen with AI agent because you can't fire them. There's actually no consequences about that. And I want to share just a little bit of an interesting story with you that I heard on the radio a while ago. Somebody basically asked, would you fly in an aeroplane flown by an AI agent, or would you fly in an aeroplane flown by a human? Now, the outcome of that whole discussion was everybody said they're quite sure that an AI agent will be able to fly it correctly, doing the right things, playing with that. But it's just more comforting knowing that the person sits behind the wheel of that aeroplane, knows that if he does something wrong, he can die, and there's an implication to him, which makes there's some extra sort of validation they have about this human sitting there that know that they have got serious consequence, something goes wrong, which is different if you have an AI agent flying the aeroplane, because there's no relationship in that. So the next thing is your organization has got various values, principles in the organization. They're all there in the organization. Yes, I know as humans, we don't always live by it, or, maybe even sometimes can actually answer that. However, but somebody needs to be able to make sure that how can we take those things, creating into rules and algorithms that can be tested to make sure that our AI agents can actually relate to our values and principles. If we have a value that says we value fairness to our customers, is that happening? Are we actually practicing that? And is our AI agents practicing that specific thing? It also, as a person, so basically who looks after the scenario, who can actually understand how many applications or AI agents are actually making decisions that could be conflicting with each other. And that owns that whole picture to understand there are three departments. Think about a banking scenario where you have one customer with three different departments that actually service them, the home loans, retail, and credit card, handling that. What if you have an AI agent actually making decisions for that client, but it could be conflicting decisions being made for the client or not in alignment with the client? Who owns that? Who understands that? And being the one person who can say this decision is allowed to be automated and this is not. So who is that person that can actually make that decision? Who have got the trust to be able to make that call where people say, we believe you, we understand that you can help us to make that specific decision. Now, this is basically not a job specification. This is basically just something to understand, because these are things that are currently happening in organizations in, if I can put it that, in a haphazard way. They're not happening in a way that are well structured. They are not happening with clear direction. They are just happening, as in my specific scenario, they're happening basically, if I can put it loosely, on the fly at the moment. So, oops. So what I basically want to do out of all of this is to basically leave you with 5 questions. I'm going to read them to you, and then I'm going to pause a bit for you to think about them. So firstly, can you basically, I'll just hold on here quickly. I need to just do this quickly. Okay. Can you name every AI system currently making decisions that affect your customers, your money, or your risk? So can you name every AI component in your organization making decisions that affect your customers, your money, and your risk? That out that way as well. For each, who decided what is allowed to decide and what must escalate to a human? If it makes a wrong decision, who's accountable, and did they know that beforehand? When AI and your stated values conflict, which one wins? And who made that call? Is there one person in your organization, one role, responsible for the answers to the first 4 questions? Now, one of the things that I want to leave you with around these ones is, were you able to answer these questions comfortably? Did you answer them? Yes, I know. Yes, I know which one do that. Yes, we have one person, one role, or maybe a team very dedicated to answering these questions. If you have, and you've done them honestly, then basically you're one of the few organizations that have successfully put this in place. If not, well, basically you've just found a role that nobody has applied for yet, and it's a role that you need to apply for. So, I don't have at this point in time a tidy framework or a method I can hand out to each of you of how these would happen and how the structure would happen. If you recall back and think back that I started this with one person, no mandate, got it right, and not necessarily by design. And your moment in your organization is happening as we speak at the moment, where people are making some of these decisions, not necessarily in a structured way, and deciding on these in a structured way. And I think that that seat is being built right now, with or without us. And I would like it to be with us. Not because we have built EA capabilities, because we are architects that are capable of doing more than just content work, but that can finally start to architect hybrid business capabilities and organizations, basically being enterprise architects. Understanding how strategy becomes structure, how values become decisions, how decisions become operating models. So not a tool, not a framework, an architect. Thank you. Right. So that's my talk. So let's see. I'll look at the questions and see if there's any questions that has come up. Basically, we can move into a question and answering session. So I saw that Andre asked, who verified that the engines operated correctly? I think at this point in time that it is very much, and I think happens in a lot of ways, that was the client of mine that actually put them together using the capability to understand how they would actually operate. And yeah, I think it's through testing, because remember, there's some testing that happens over time, and to see that, because that whether the outcome is what is they needed to achieve. So that, but I do believe there's a broader spectrum in this case. In any case where something needed to be happen and there is nobody that actually does it, it normally gets done by somebody. And I think in this case, to answer your question, I believe he did most of the testing to make sure they operate correctly. Is there any other questions? I don't see anything on the chat though. Okay. All right. Andre, yes, good question. I think that is let me rather put it this way. I think that is one of the things where this is a new field, and as I said to you, I don't have a method or a framework for you. I think this is a new field which is going to be developed over time, and will need it to be explored over time. So the best I can say in this specific client is that watch the space. I'm quite sure there is going to be things happening in the future around this part. Okay. Right. Sabah, I don't know if you want to say anything. I don't see any other questions. Then we can close up.
No, I
Yeah,
think
I agree.
thank you. Somebody saying
Yes.
something?
No, it just was, I think Andre just said, I think universities need to look into courses in this aspect. Yeah, I think that will be quite an interesting field going forward.
For sure, for sure. I think just thank you, Marius, for the presentation, and thank you everybody for attending. I think that the gap between academia and the industry is important. So, Prof. Carlos's comment is very important. Um, and all of us need to do more to help with the students. Um, yeah, I think thanks a lot, Marius. If there are no other questions, is Calvin here? No, I
I'll
think he's
quickly.
got technical
Yeah, I
issues.
think he's got technical problems. Yeah, so I think I can then basically maybe close out
I,
the.
I,
Okay.
yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I am here. I hope you
Oh,
can
okay.
hear me this around.
Yes, we can.
All right. No, I don't have any words. Thank you, Marius, for that insightful presentation. I got the first half. I missed about 5 minutes of it, then I got back in. I just want to thank you for the presentation and thank everyone for taking their time so early in the morning to join us. And we appreciate you. We appreciate the support. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks, Saba, for co-hosting. I hope we see you soon on the next one. And very important from me, everyone. I hope you have already completed the skill survey and you are looking out for, you have done your nominations for the President's Awards, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the conference in October. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great morning.
Thanks, everyone. I'll end it. All right. Goodbye.